Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is the Straight Outta BS podcast. I'm your host, Jordan, as usual. Wanted to thank you guys again for sharing the videos, for liking them, all of that. We're about to break, I think, 4K in views. So let's keep going. Let's keep pushing past. Let's aim for 5. And we're almost at, I think, 700 hours of view time. So thank you guys for that. And yeah, I'm doing a little bit better, but I'm still struggling a little bit. But and I'm sorry, it's been a while since I did a video, but I'm getting back to it, getting back into the swing of things, and hopefully we can get something going like once a week at least for the podcast. And so for that, hold on a sec, I want to do sorry, I haven't done this in a while. So I'm going to do a moment of silence on the count of 3 for somebody who's still struggling with addiction, with thoughts, anything like that. So on the count of 3, I'm going to do a moment of silence. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you guys for that. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce my guest for the day. Go ahead and introduce yourself and where you went and what years.
My name's Aimee. I went to Mountain Park Baptist Sporting Academy in Missouri from October 2001 to May 2004. I got a boarding school for like a month. And May 2004, Refuge of Grace Girls Academy. That's now Wings of Faith Academy from June 2004 to January 2006, and worked at a troubled teen boarding school for about a month in 2009.
Okay. And the first place you went, did you get transported, or did your parents bring you up there? What happened with that?
My parents brought me. They had considered I found out later they considered a transport company, but instead they gave me too much of my meds and my food. So I slept the entire trip from Houston to St. Louis, Missouri to Patterson, Missouri. So yeah.
Okay. And you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but what were you doing at home that do you know why you got sent there? Like what was happening at home like prior to that to like
I came from a troubled background. I was adopted when I was 3, and I had issues. I was diagnosed with PTSD at 3 years old. And my mother didn't have any help because my adopted dad walked out on us, and he was struggling, and I had issues and rebellion, and we couldn't get along, and I was lied to and told that I could go to a group home, that I'd still go to like regular school and, still get to have friends and stuff. I just wouldn't live at home, which was a better option because of the things, the fights and stuff that were going on at home that were turning physical and things like that. And I was like, yeah, I'll go. And then they dragged me out to the middle of nowhere in these mountains to this compound. When I wake up and I see this old freaking log cabin, all these houses everywhere behind this gate, and nothing around for miles. I was like, oh shit. And then I see these girls walking around in these long skirts, and they just, it didn't feel right. It felt like I just stepped back in time.
Yeah. Completely understandable. How long after you got there, walk us through your first day there, and like how long after you got there did it realize for you to realize things like were crazy, like this wasn't normal? Like how long?
I realized it like quick as hell, because what happened was you get escorted, you get in through the front door, and there's a huge picture of Lester Roloff, because they were a direct result of the Lester Roloff schools. Like they worked with Lester Roloff at one point. And so there's that. And then once you get through the office and everything, and they're kind of talking to you, but they're talking different. They're, worshiping this man and all this stuff that we're about to do to your life. And I'm looking at these girls, and nobody can keep their head up. It's all like these broken down girls. They're not allowed to look at anybody. And I was like, something is off. They had to walk in pairs. And I get 6 of them escort me down to one of the dorms, and we sat at the back of the dorms by the piano, and they'd sit there the whole time in case you tried to run, they'd restrain you or something like that. And they're telling you all these rules, like you're not allowed to say dang or darn, you're not allowed to talk about TV, you're not allowed to talk about music. And I had gone in about a month after September 11th, and they had kind of knew something had happened, but we weren't allowed any TVs, any radio, any contact with the outside world.
Yeah.
So they're trying to like talk to me without getting caught about what happened. And I'm like, well, did you hear this new song that came out? You know, I'm like this talking, and then they're like, oh, you can't talk about that. You can't talk about that. You can't talk about your life at home. You can't talk about any of your friends, you know, none of that stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, what happens if I talk about it? And they're like, well, you see that girl over there? She's not allowed to talk, period. She's not allowed to use the bathroom, asked to use the bathroom, not allowed to ask anything. That one over there is in that crazy looking dress because she had a bad attitude that Debbie Gerhardt didn't like. So that's the only thing she's allowed to wear, and specific meals depending on what your punishment level was.
Yeah.
And so this is all within like an hour of walking through the door. And I'm like, oh shit, something is wrong. Because it's like watching Amish people almost.
Yeah.
Then you watch them like race to the mirrors. They got 10 minutes to get ready because if you look out of place, you know, you're in trouble, but you can't spend too much time in front of the mirror because then you're vain.
Yeah.
And then they'll cut your hair or make you wear weird clothes just to break you.
Yeah. It's all about brainwashing and breaking us down to rebuild us back up into what they think we should be.
Robots.
Yeah, exactly. So the Lester Roloff schools, so these had a religious aspect to them, right?
Yes, they're independent fundamental Baptist.
Okay. And was your family Baptist at all? Were they religious at all?
Yes, they were religious. I mean, I grew up going to church and I never understood it. To me, I'm like, why am I going to ask somebody up in the sky for permission for something? I never really got it. And I was rebelling too. And the more they tried to shove God down my throat, I'm like, no. So they're like, okay, well, we'll just send her. They told me, and this was a direct saying from the guy who ran the school, but they said, you were so far to the left of where we wanted you that we took this drastic measure hoping you would end up somewhere in the middle, like, you know, in between the ditches is what an expression they would use there. So you weren't on the left, you weren't on the right, you were just in this path on your own. And that's where they wanted me to be because they said I was too far gone.
Well, you're in the path that it's easy to control you in. If you're in the middle, it's easier to control you.
Yes, and what's the best way to control is by fear. And
Yeah.
they use God, they weaponize religion, they weaponize God as this fear factor. If you do this, he's going to strike some kind of punishment. We would get told stories about girls who ran away getting hit by 18-wheelers and killed because
God will strike you down. God will smite you.
After about a year there, I tried to run away and I was restrained. It took about 30 people to get me down to the ground. I had about 16 people holding me down by my pressure points, 300-pound girl sitting on my back for about 9 hours straight. And I lost feeling in 2 of my fingers for 3 months. And I wasn't allowed to even see a doctor for it because that was God's will, because I tried to run from his will. And I was like, are you serious? You're denying medical treatment based on this.
Did they, I'm curious because you said that, did they apply any medical treatment to anybody? Did they give you meds? Did they do any of that? Or was that against God, quote unquote?
That wasn't any like mental medications. They say you had bipolar disorder or something. That wasn't a real disorder. It just meant you needed to pray it away. You needed more Jesus in your life. So there was no mental medications allowed. There was no therapy. There was all just Bible God, Bible God, Bible God. If you're not doing this right, then you're not saved. But once saved, always saved. But if you do these things, you're not saved, so you're going to hell. And it's just this constant, am I doing it good enough? You know, and that's where the anxiety kicks in and the control factors with them, because keeping you in that balance of never knowing if you're doing right or not, then you're automatically going to try to conform more to keep the punishments off.
Well, yeah, and also, if we're going, I'm not sure how far baptism is from Christianity, but in the Christian belief, in the Christian religion at least, you're born in sin. Like you're automatically because they used adultery to make you or whatever, you are born in sin in their eyes. So I don't know how different it is in baptism to that, but I know in a lot of religions, like the fact that you're born was a fucking sin. So if we're going off of that type of thinking, then you were born a sinner when you came out, so there was never any hope for anybody.
Exactly.
Like, so,
it was all our faults. You know, you're
yeah,
born
exactly.
in, you have to go ask forgiveness. You know, I
Yeah.
remember one time we got put on lockdown. We had like 200 and something girls, like 30 boys, and a whole bunch of investigators came in from like different law enforcement fields, and they were talking to some students one-on-one. We weren't allowed to take any medication or anything without them watching, because they'd let us have like Tylenol, things like that. But it was, you know, you had to be seriously like almost on the verge of dying to go see a doctor.
It's crazy.
Because they didn't want you to talk, and they'd send at least like 3 people with you to go to make sure you didn't talk to anybody. Well, after this investigation, Debbie, one of the ladies that ran the school, she got up and what they would do is these powwows where they'd bring everybody into the school, and she'd pull you up on stage one by one and just rip you a new one in front of everybody, have people decide on your punishments. And she said one day, she goes, you know, y'all are all just whores. You were sexually abused at 12 years old. You weren't sexually abused. That was your fault. You seduced that man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of mentality that we're dealing with. And if somebody is evil enough to say something like that, imagine what they are doing.
Oh yeah, totally. Before we go further, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm bad at talking over.
You good?
That school is no longer open. They closed in 2004.
Okay. I wanted to say before we continue, just for anybody that might try and jump in down my throat about, you know, putting, even though it's true about Christianity, all that shit, I have no problem. I just want to throw this out there. I have no problem with people who are involved in religion. I'm not saying religion all over is bad. I'm just saying in schools like this, it probably wasn't the best mixture. I have my own beliefs about religion, but I'm not trying to bring that into this conversation. But I'm just letting people know that I hope people aren't dissuaded by me just saying that. I don't think badly of people that have religion in their life. If that's what you need to believe that there's somebody in the sky that loves you, and that's fine. That's fine. It's fine. Do you, and I have no problem with it. Whatever works best for you is what I want. So I was just saying that that's how they get you in a lot of religions, is the whole you need to pray more because of this ailment or whatever. I was just trying to point that out. So I just wanted to clarify that for viewers. Let's see. So what was the structure of that school? What was the structure like at the first school? What would a basic day look like?
Get up, go to breakfast. Well, line up in the hallway, study our Bible verses, because we had to quote Bible verses every day. And if we didn't make our memories, that we weren't allowed to watch movies on Friday night, because they would have like movie nights, but they're like these movies. Anna Green Gables was all the time. Princess Bride. If there was cussing in it, we weren't allowed to watch it.
So treating you like children. So essentially, yeah.
And so every meal we'd had to line up, and we'd have to study our Bible verses the whole time, and we'd have to sing this song, and then go to breakfast. Not allowed to talk while you're eating. Not allowed to talk. You're not allowed to talk to anybody, like one-on-one. There always has to be other people in the conversation, and it depends on where you stood in the program. And then go eat breakfast, clean everything, clean the entire dorms, go to school, do our prayers, do our Bible reading, do our Bible verses, our cursive writing, because we had to write out in cursive every day. We did PACES, Accelerated Christian Education, where basically we taught ourselves our schoolwork.
Okay.
And almost all our diplomas from back then are fake, because they were not accredited. So we have to go get GEDs to go to college.
Okay, yeah, that's very similar. I've heard similar stories from a lot of other survivors. Let's see. Were there? Did you notice there being a lot of like atheist or agnostic people there? Were there a lot of people that weren't even religious that went there, that had a big problem with the religion aspect of it? Did you notice that?
Okay. Yes, there'd be people from different religions there, because they'd had people in different states that worked in the court systems, to where they could get kids sent to these schools instead of having to go to like juvie.
Yeah, that's crazy to me though, because if somebody has one belief, I would my take on that would be I want to foster that belief instead of trying to push a whole new belief system on them, you know, because that to me, if you already have one idea about how the world works, if you're completely shattering that for the person, it's going to confuse the hell out of them. It's going to make them extremely confused, and they're not going to know what's right, what's wrong, what's up, what's down. So that I feel like that's really, you know, it's horrible for everybody, but I feel like even more so for people that may have had other religions or come from atheism. Probably atheism was probably the worst, because in atheism you don't believe anything, you know, so you don't believe anything. So
there was no other religions allowed to be practiced. So if you came from another religion, you were not allowed to do anything with that. You had to follow this certain religion because they were the only way to heaven. And those other religions, well, look how good they worked for you. You ended up here, you know, because we weren't looked at as, you know, kids in trouble, you know, that there was issues when 90% of these students are adopted.
yeah.
So there's a big red flag right there, but that means we all come from some kind of issues, but then we're denied any help with that and told, you know, oh, so the more the government tries to come in and talk to us, the more that means we're doing God's will, because the government, if the government's mad at us and trying to shut us down, that means we're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And you know, and that is a scary thing to hear too, because okay, so law enforcement, because they're trying to figure out and trying to remove students, that means you're going to go 10 times harder. And that means you're doing God's will. Like, no, there's a no.
Yeah. Yeah. Another big belief I have is like, why are they even sending people from court to these places if we don't mix religion and government together? Why is there even people in there, like, you know, making that idea, making that suggestion? Because aren't we supposed to separate church and state? That's in, like, you're supposed to do that.
Well, it's like what's going on with Agape in Missouri right now. Trying to get them shut down. You know, they've got they strategically placed people because like there's a guy that works in the sheriff's department in Cedar County who is married to the granddaughter of the owners who used to work at the school. So he's in there. The judge over the case helped start the law firm that is representing the boarding school. And we've had petition after petition, hearing after hearing these past couple of weeks trying to get them shut down. And the judge is just blocking and throwing stuff out and pushing it out. And it's just, it's insane because they do this. They put the people in the law enforcement places, and but where it's not officially connected, you have to dig. And you have to know the insides of how they work and start exposing it. And then you're like, these people are geniuses in what they do, because they pick these small towns, bring a bunch of revenue in because, you know, you got a school with 100, 200 students, parents coming to visit, throw on rodeos, throw on this stuff where the public thinks they know what goes on. And then they start protecting the schools.
But I feel like the problem, even if we were to call out the people and be like, you know, let's do a flushing of, you know, maybe this courtroom or whatever, and get a whole new, you know, a whole new judge, all of this. And even if they went out of their way and tried to find like maybe, you know, people that were neutral, maybe agnostic or maybe atheist people to come in there and do a proper court session, I feel like then they would, you know, try and go under the covers more and be like, oh, well, then he is an atheist, he is an agnostic, but really he's not. He's a fucking, you know, a Christian or whatever they need to suit their agendas. So I feel like as soon as we call out something like that, they're just going to change their directive and make it even harder, because their whole thing is mind control. Their whole thing is like, you know, pretending to be one way and they're a different way. So it's a tricky road to get this figured out, but we need to get it figured out. Like,
it's a very tricky road. And then the connections where, you know, these independent fundamental Baptist schools are still connected to these schools and CDU. And it's all these different branches to where it's this multi-billion-dollar industry that is all connected, but they are so good at hiding and discrediting survivors because we were the troubled teens. So now we're labeled as that forever. And they prey on these desperate parents and feed them one line and manipulate them to where, you know, the parents and the children's relationships are damaged forever. Families destroyed. All because of this money and this, hey, we've got this, we can hide behind religion because the way it's the religious separations, and it's just, it's sickening.
I'm curious to know how many people went in there Baptist and came out horrified of baptism.
A ton. There's
a ton? Yeah.
a ton.
Repulsed by it, right? Repulsed by it, probably, yes.
Ways to turn people against God, because, you know, we still have our triggers. I still can't go to church sometimes without memories coming back. And, you know, it's the quickest way to destroy somebody's faith in God.
Yeah.
So they are
single-handed. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
They're single-handedly turning people. They're supposed to be bringing people into the fold, but they are doing the best at making it to where those people don't want anything to do with any type of organized religion ever, because it was such a cult.
Yeah. I just had a thought too. This is a more malevolent. Like, what if this was going on? What if they knew that people would be repulsed by the baptism aspect, so they did that purposely? Because there's a theory, and I'm saying this is a theory, people. I'm not saying this is true necessarily, but there are a lot of people that believe that there's a lot of people in the government, they're actually Luciferian or whatever, or Satan, like, they worship Satan. I'm personally an agnostic. I'm kind of neutral on this, but I know that I've heard people that say that a lot of people in the government may be Luciferian and they may be doing rituals and whatnot. So maybe they knew that they'd be repulsed by baptism. So maybe this is on the other side of the coin. Maybe they're trying to push people into the other side of the thing and go, maybe I want to be a Lucid. Maybe I want to be a Satanist now, you know, because they're so repulsed by all religion. That could be, you know, it could be anything, but I'm just throwing out ideas there, you know, like, because it could be like a reverse psychology type thing like that, where they want us to be repulsed by religion. So I just thought of that. That's crazy.
Then you have to fall for everything, hook, line, and sinker, and have, you know, the schools like Hyles Anderson College with Jack Scott that's in prison right now for, you know, the things he did with the minor. And but they promote all these places because they have like, well, you need to go to these colleges if you want to do this, and you have to go to these unaccredited, non-secular places, because if you go to this, then you're serving the devil. You know, you can't wear pants, you can't wear makeup, tattoos are the devil, you're going to hell if you have a tattoo, go to a movie theater, listen to music with the drum in it.
Yeah. And I could see people getting out and wearing those clothes or getting tattoos and being like, well, since I have this, maybe I'm not a religious person, maybe I'm a Satanist, maybe I am a bad person, you know? So like, it's really hard to know what's going on in the elite's minds, what's going on in the people who are running this country's minds. Like, what do they really want? Because what they portray they want doesn't seem to be the truth like 50% of the time or more. You know, like they don't seem to be owning what they really want. Okay,
it's smoke and mirrors, and it's just enough to keep you confused. So you can't.
It's not supposed to make sense in their eyes. Even though it makes sense to them, it's not supposed to make sense to us. Let's see. So how long were you at the first place?
From October 12th, 2001 to like May 24th, 2004.
Okay. And what was the name of that place? I'm just taking notes so I have it for the title.
Mountain Park Baptist Boarding Academy.
Mountain Park.
And if you look it up,
what's up with the long ass names?
It's a tongue twister, but if you look it up, there was a murder that happened there in the 90s, and they still stayed open.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it's Mountain Park Baptist Mormon Academy?
Boarding Academy, not Mormon.
Okay. I know that Mormons have a lot to do with these schools, so.
I have friends that went to the Mormon parts of these schools, like I know a girl that went to the one Paris Hilton went to.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so you were there about 3 years, right? Correct?
2.5 years. I was there.
Okay. And Did they make you go through seminars there? I know I've had a couple people on the show before that have been to these religious places, and I don't think you do have seminars there. You have a different kind of version, or isn't there church, right?
It's complete immersion. There's not like a specific time for these sessions, like these seminars. It is complete immersion of God now rules everything. They don't like your attitude. They'll take your schoolwork away. If you're focusing on your schoolwork too much so you can get out of there, then they take your schoolwork away, and that's all you're allowed to do is read the Bible. Because obviously
So, go ahead.
Because then you're not trying to serve God. You're just trying to serve your own wishes on getting out.
Yeah. So essentially their version of seminars is you just study 100% immersion into that religion or whatever. Okay. Okay. Interesting.
Like you had to memorize 3 Bible verses a day and quote them every day. Like say, 1 Peter. We had to memorize the entire book of 1 Peter, but how it went would be like 1 Peter 1:1-3, then the next day 1-6, and the next day 1-9. If you missed any of those verses, you were not allowed to go to watch the movie. You had to go sit and listen to preaching tapes and write Bible verses for the entire couple hours.
So indoctrination on top of indoctrination.
And you had to eat differently that night because that would be the one night we were allowed sodas and sweets. But if you didn't make your memory, you got a peanut butter jelly sandwich and some popcorn, and that was it. You weren't allowed anything but like milk, water, or maybe some juice. But it was also food was held over you.
Okay. Did they have probably rules against everything, right?
Everything, yes. I mean, we weren't allowed to look at the guys. We weren't allowed to have any communication with guys because we were whores. We were barely allowed outside because we might help a fence post because we're all just whores.
I'm curious for you. Are you repulsed by religion? Are you religious now?
I am more spiritual than I am religious. I believe in that there's something out there that protects us. If you're doing good out there, good comes back karma. I have an issue with organized religion because it automatically triggers this hierarchy thing in me to where I just stay away from it. I don't judge people by it at all. I know my view is different. I escaped from this. So I'm going to run as far from it as I can.
Yeah.
But I don't. My thing is whatever makes you be able to look yourself in the mirror every morning and be proud of who you are and you do good in the world, it doesn't matter. But when you start using your religion to hurt people, then there's an issue.
Or pull the veil over people's eyes or any of that shit. That's not, in my opinion, that's not.
There was a lot of racism in these schools too. If you were Black or Asian or something, you were treated completely different.
Yeah. When in most of these religions, isn't it love everybody? You're supposed to love your enemies.
Yeah, love your enemies. Everybody's the same. We all come from the same. Yeah. I watched a girl get kicked out of church once. She was a former student that had come in because they would let some, former students come in, but then they thought she was a lesbian. So they forced her out of the church service and out of the building because, if you're gay, you're going to hell.
Because they thought she was. Are they even sure that she was, or are they just assuming?
They just assumed.
Okay. Yeah. See, that's not the inclusive thing. In almost all religions, they have a thing called the inclusion rule, or not specifically called the inclusion rule, but they believe that everybody should be included. You should love your brothers, love your enemies, all of that shit. It's usually an aspect in a lot of these religions. So where's that? Why aren't you? You should be embracing the lesbian or embracing the bisexual person.
Well,
you should be embracing them.
If you look at the Bible, he never used a person that didn't come from a bad background. He used whores and thieves and murderers.
Exactly.
So why are you casting those out that he specifically used in your own words? Just like there, women were not allowed to speak in church. Women did not preach in the church. Female pastors like Joyce Myers, they preached against her. She was prideful and full of Satan because women don't talk. They obey their husbands. Basically we're there to look good, produce children, and we're not allowed to say no. But then I asked him one day, I said, how does this make sense? You don't, but we were the ones raising the children. You know, we were the ones watching the staff kids, changing their diapers, babysitting them. And I asked him when I said, how does this make sense? We're not allowed to speak in church, but yet we're allowed to help. We're allowed to raise the next generation of preachers.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Let's see. I wanted to point out earlier too, this came up in my mind. Us as adopted people, I was adopted at birth. We're already, at least I was, looking for that. My parents didn't get divorced until I was about 18, but I know for a lot of people that were adopted, they're always searching, if they don't have a father in their life, they're searching for that accepting father figure. If they don't have a mother in their life, they're looking for that accepting mother figure. So a big part of religion that I see is that people are looking for that mother and father in the sky, or whatever, that is God. And so for us, especially adopted people, I find it really interesting that there were a lot of adopted people there, because even more so for us, we want that mommy and daddy in the sky type loving emotion feeling, that we're loved, that we're accepted. So, you know, I don't think that's an accident that they did that, you know?
I don't either, because I remember it messed with me for a long time. Like, okay, you chose to take care of me. I was not an accident. You went out of your way. You had to go through these steps to make me your child. And
Yeah.
then when things get tough, you turn around and send me away. I was already sent away. So, you know, here it is. You feel like you've been thrown away by two families, that
Yeah.
it's just, you know, and so you're already breaking, and then you've got this angry, vengeful people around you, and it's the quickest way to take weak people. They, you know, and there are parents that they can't afford the elite school, you know.
Yeah.
It's that middle class and the lower class that they go after, that doesn't have the help, that doesn't have the resources and the financial resources to really help their children if they want. And they think they're doing the best thing because the image they presents this loving place, not realizing, yeah, all the letters I wrote home, there's initials on the back because they had to read them. If they didn't like what I wrote in them, I had to rewrite them over and over until if I spoke out about, you know, the girl with cerebral palsy that they are putting in the farthest place away, making her in extreme physical pain, having to do more physical stuff than anybody else because she, you know, she has cerebral palsy. I mean, a lot of us have been traumatized by that. But if we spoke about that, then we got put where we weren't allowed to talk, but we had to write these. I had 3 years of letters I wrote home, and I look at them and I'm like, you know, I know what I was doing in them, so I can see the signals I'm sending home, but they already know that you're going to do that, and they have a preemptive plan in place to silence you and discredit you because you're troubled. Just because I'm troubled doesn't mean I don't matter. Just because I'm troubled doesn't mean I get to become your freaking, you know, slave trafficking person and help build all your campuses while you get paid for it while the students do the physical labor, you know?
While you're buying yachts over here, we have all, you know, hundreds upon hundreds of people, you know, suffering in these schools, and you're fucking buying yachts with the money you're getting from that. You're not even you're overcharging the parents, you're overcharging everybody. It's like, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy to me. It's crazy, and it needs to be stopped. It really needs to be stopped. That's why I feel like my work's so important, and anybody that does work similar to mine is important. That's why, even though things have gotten hard and I've been going through a lot of depression and stuff, you know, I feel like this work is important. Just last night, I had somebody that's been posting a lot, not going to name their name, but they've been posting a lot of suicidal kind of thoughts on Facebook and stuff, and they've been kind of doing really bad. And the other night she wrote me a message, and she said, because at first she wasn't sure she even wanted to watch my channel and all that, and I told her if she ever wants to come on and share a story, you know, you're more than welcome. But the other night she I guess she finally started to watch my videos, and she wrote a comment and said, you know, I just want you to know that no matter what you might think, your work is really important. It's actually really helping me. So like hearing stuff like that is like the reason I do this stuff. You know, I don't do it for, you know, it'd be cool if I started getting paid a little bit for it, but, you know, I don't expect that. That's not why I'm doing this, you know? It's not why I'm doing it, you know? I'm doing it to help people. I'm doing it to spread the word. And anybody that thinks otherwise, you know, you need to check yourself, because I'm not. No,
It's not about the money.
it's
You know,
not.
people hear of some interviews I've done and things like that. Well, how much money are you getting from it? I was like, it's not about the money. It's about stopping this
Yeah,
cycle of abuse that keeps continuing and is generational, and the trauma that there's no need for it.
yeah, there really is no need for it. But we need to all to come together and on one united front, and like we have been, and like push against this stuff. And so
And
I
that's
feel
the
like,
hardest, is uniting the survivors that come from the different schools, because it's all a different, well, this one matters because of this. Every school matters. It's just which ones that we can get out. Those are the ones we focus on and put the pressure, raise the awareness, things like you're doing. I mean, I remember back in 2006 trying to do these kind of things and just trying to find survivors and connect, and then Facebook and stuff. We went from Yahoo chat rooms
yeah,
to Facebook to TikTok to now podcasts and things. And it's like, we are coming together. It's just, it's a painful process too.
yeah,
Because
for
you've got
sure.
the triggers from reading the trauma over and over again. It takes its toll. The depression hits.
For sure. And I just want to point out that everybody's experience is valid. I tell people this all the time when I'm reaching out to them, because I get a lot of people, they hit me back with a response like, oh, I want to share my story, but I'm not sure if it would even matter. Well, it does matter, because if nothing else, you're getting your experience of that place out there, okay? And the only way we're really going to spread education is to get everybody's experiences, okay? And for people to make their own informed decision from that information, okay? That's the only reason. Yes.
No person's story is more important than the other, because they all tie together. They all prove that this is real, because that's the hardest part, is getting people to believe that this actually happens. Because when they hear it, they're like, this sounds like a movie.
Yeah, I caught myself. I was like, just last night, because I'm on a few dating apps, and I finally started talking to this woman, and it had been like the first time I've actually had a connection with somebody that wasn't in the program, right? So I was like starting to talk to her, and instantly I started telling her about my fucking shit that I went through, and it's just like, instantly, just like, I know that it was overwhelming. I just even told her, I'm like, I know this is overwhelming, but like, because that's what I do. And I was like, I do a podcast for survivors. And it's like, I started thinking to myself, like, am I ever like doing this? Like, it's crazy, like, even like wanting to get into relationships or like start talking to somebody new, even as a friendship. Because it's like, at what point do I bring in this information that I went through all this crazy traumatic shit? Like, do I even bring it up? Like, should I bring it up right away so we can talk about it? Like,
I struggle with that so much. I got divorced last year. I was married for almost 10 years. And now I'm like, well, this is such a passion that it's like, I want everybody to know. But then I'm like, but then again, do I want this guy that I'm interested in to know I have all these issues?
yeah. It's like crazy. Oh, I have all these issues. Look at all my issues. Look at all the shit I've been through.
Do you want to know all my issues, all my red flags? Because here, I'll lay them all out for you.
Yeah, we can spend a whole day going over my red flags and my triggers. And then we'll see if you're still in, you're still in. Most people.
But then it's like, okay, wait, how crazy are they really that they're okay with my crazy? That goes through your head.
Yeah, exactly. But at that point, maybe it'll work because they are as crazy as I am, like.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I had a crazy thought. I was like, what if we made like a fucking comedy store for like survivors of like experiences of like how crazy and difficult it is to even talk to regular people. Like just making jokes about shit like that. Cause it's really like, it's serious, like shit's tragic. Like,
we have a totally different style of humor because we've seen such in the underworld that I'll tell somebody something that happened. Like I'll have some friends sitting around a table or something, and I'll be laughing about something that happened. It was funny to me, and they'll look at me like horrified, and I'm like,
yeah,
like that was traumatic. How are you laughing? And I was like, that was traumatic.
Because I know I watch a lot of comedians and I watch a lot of stand-up comedy, and the one thing that rings true with almost every comic is that they had a difficult past. They dealt with addiction. They dealt with all sorts of things. So I just feel like maybe there should be a space. I think there's actually one comedian that's actually out already that went to one of these schools that I saw on Joe Rogan. and he was talking about his experience in one of these schools. And I was just like, but why aren't there more comedians that went through a boarding school? I feel like that might be a good outlet for some people. So I just had this random thought the other night, and I was.
That's an awesome thought, because people crack up when I start telling stories. They're like, how, you know, you can make the humor in it. And sometimes if you can make it more humorous, then maybe that's another way of raising awareness instead of it being this depressing story. Like,
because I feel like people could relate a lot more probably to a comedy aspect on it. You know, yeah, I went through something shitty, but I'm gonna tell it to you in a way that's crazy, and it's gonna blow your mind, like, and you're gonna laugh, you know, like. So I just had that crazy thought the other night, so I jotted it down in my phone, and just a thought for survivors: if you're maybe have an inkling for comedy, start doing stand-up comedy. Like, I guarantee you can make people laugh with a lot of the shit we've seen, like, for real, like, it's drastic, like. A lot of the shit I tell people, you're like, you're joking, right? You're joking, yeah. Right? I'm like, no, really, this happened. Like, I'm dead serious. I lived through this shit. Like,
yeah, I got baptized and they tried to drown me while baptizing me. That's a fun one.
yeah. It's like, that's not supposed to happen. Like,
and you're laughing. What is wrong with you? And I'm just like, maybe I'm a little demented, but you laugh to keep from crying, because, you know, a lot of comedians too, they're using their weak points and making them strong points.
Yeah, exactly. So there's an idea for anybody that might feel stuck or whatnot. You know, maybe you want to pursue a profession in stand-up comedy. It's actually, you know, stand-up comedy is actually doing pretty good right now. Like, there's a lot of people that are making really good money for themselves with stand-up comedy. So there's just an idea. Let's move on to the second school you went to. So what was the name of that school? Sorry, I have a horrible memory. What was the name of that school? The second one.
Okay, the second one, I was in a transition time at Agape boarding school, which is an all boys school, but they were starting a girls' school.
So transition at Agape.
I lived with a couple of the staff families, and I was treated differently because I was a student, but they didn't know really what to do because I was this girl, and the people that were running the school were moving down from Michigan because they were picking up girls from another school that closed because of abuse stuff, investigations going on. And they picked them up and brought them to Missouri and started Refuge of Grace Academy at the time. This was in like June 2004. Refuge of Grace Academy started in Stockton, Missouri. They closed this year.
That was Refuge of Grace?
Refuge of Grace Academy. They later changed their name to Wings of Faith Girls Academy, because a lot of the schools, what they do is when people start speaking out and they start getting this bad reputation online and stuff, they'll rebrand. And they'll just change their name, or they'll just change states or something, change their location. So while they were in Stockton, Missouri, it was Refuge Grace Girls Academy and then Wings of Faith Girls Academy. They, quote unquote, willingly closed their doors in May this year, but they are under Agape.
Okay, so it's under the banner of Agape and those schools. Okay.
Jim Clemenson was their pastor, who was the pastor of Agape, who is the founder of Agape. But he passed away last year.
Okay. So I'm curious about, did you know that you were going to be transferred to Agape? Did they tell you anything beforehand? Like, because that seems like a weird transition to me.
What happened was they told us after church on Sunday morning after church that Mountain Park was closing their doors. We would all be gone within the week. A lot of us were going to other schools because we had connections with the different schools. They'd come visit at times.
Yeah.
So the next morning I was one of the first ones called up. And now I had seen my adopted dad one time in two and a half years for 3 hours. This was the first time I'd seen my adopted mom. I went a 6-month period, no phone calls, no letters, no contact whatsoever. And so they called me to pack my stuff up, and I'm like, yes, I'm finally free. And I get through the front door and I get told, oh, you're going to Agape. Remember the girls' school that came through here and sang a few months ago? You're going to go over there, and this staff member is going with you. And I just remember I felt myself go from this happy to but going, okay, at least I know what I'm in for this time, so I can start out playing the game instead of having to learn the game. I could start out with it. And the staff member is going to be thinking the same thing because we were students together. She graduated high school and she stayed on as staff.
Yeah.
Because most of the people that work in these schools, they're either related by like family,
Yeah.
or they're like former students because they pay the bare minimum. I ended up like staff for about 6 months, and I was paid $100 a month plus free ice cream on Fridays and room and board.
That's crazy. So they
So
told
it's another
you.
way of trapping these people there and keeping them working for you for pennies because you get $100 a month. I mean, you can't even make a phone call that's not through one of their landlines. So you don't know it's being recorded. You don't know if it's being listened to right then because
Sure it is.
everything is monitored.
Yeah. Yeah.
And most of like a lot of the staff families that work at these places don't even make enough money to where they're on food stamps. So they're on government assistance, but they don't want the government to step in and say they can't do this, but they want the government's handouts. And they keep their staff families that poor to where, how are they going to leave? If you've never been on the food stamps and stuff like that, it's a trap. You can't get out of it.
Yeah. I'm actually on food stamps right now. Yeah, I'm on food stamps.
It's hard to get it,
Yeah, it's
and
hard.
it's a lot of us, there's no life skills taught. So we come out and it takes us, some of us, it takes decades to really get on our feet because, we're still in survivor mode. And when you live in survivor mode, you're one step out the door all the time. And to get to where, okay, I can take control. I don't have to let this stuff in my life anymore. It takes us so long to get to that point of we matter because we were so beaten down for years. They're good.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely takes a long time, especially when hard drugs and stuff like that become involved. That was my downfall. Was I got addicted to heroin and meth I was injecting for a long time. And I have 17 months off that shit, and I just smoke weed, and so, but it took me a really long time to come to that spot because I had a lot of trauma. I'm still dealing with trauma and purging my body of all of the unwanted experiences. But I have to go through those experiences and I have to re-experience them in order to actually process them fully. So.
See, and you got to get me on a different tangent because I went to a trauma treatment center last year that specialized in women that had been through extreme trauma. It took me a week and a half to find this place, calling all over the state because everywhere is a 7 to 10 day hold for meds. Nobody wants to deal with the issues. There's not the therapy and stuff out there because and I don't know how many therapists I would start telling my story and they're looking at me in shock. And I'm like, well, shit, you can't help me because if you've been to school and don't know what to do, and so it's just the medicines, which just mask the problems. And with the PTSD and stuff, the things that trigger out of nowhere, it's so hard to figure out how to not let those thoughts control you anymore. And so this place specializes in the therapy and the why our brains are the way they are. And, the difference that we actually have to live a completely different life and work harder in the way we think and think with a purpose, not let all this stuff come back. And it's like, God, this place was supposed to help me. And look at what all I've had to go through to come out the other side.
Yeah. So did this trauma place help you or did it not? No?
Yes, it did.
Okay,
There's only places like it in the country.
What's it called for people that?
It's called Innova Grace Recovery. It's in San Antonio, Texas.
Is it ENOVA?
INNOVAGRACE.
Okay. And it's in San Antonio, Texas?
Yes. They're very new. They've only been around about 2 years.
Okay.
But they are now expanding. They're expanding their internet to where they can help do IOP over video chats and stuff with therapists. and
Kinda
things
like
like that. And
kind of like BetterHelp, but
that's,
actually like works.
yeah, these therapists really care. I never had therapists like this. Like, it, they do their best to help you through situations. Like I had lost insurance and I got a scholarship to go because of some organizations they work with. I wrote a letter, got a scholarship, got all my treatment paid for. When I got out, they helped me figure out how to stay in therapy without it breaking, without me, financially, have
Yeah.
ways that they try to work with people. And so they are in just Texas right now, but they're expanding out. And it's a dream of mine to see this place really expand, because it's staffed with people who care, who listen, who, it's not about the medicine. It's about, how do we help you? Because it's not fair that you went through this. How do we give you the tools and make you want to use them?
Yeah. And
And it literally changed my life. I've told them, thank you for your help. You didn't save my life. You gave me the tools, but being there in a way that there was no judgment and it was just true caring, you made me want to use them, and I used them, and you showed me how, because you believed me. You listened,
yeah, that's one of the biggest parts, and that's what I try and be really good at on my show, is to listen and actually be like present with the person, like not just listen to them, but hear them. Like hearing them is different than listening. So that's why a lot of the time I repeat back what somebody will say to me, because in doing that, you're listening to them and you're hearing it. By repeating it back, you're hearing what they're saying, because you're repeating it back to them. And in order to repeat it back to them, you have to have actually heard what they said, instead of just listening to what they said.
It's a listening, and I'm making sure I'm hearing this the same way you're saying it. It's nice. It's because that's what a lot of us need, is just people that would listen and not try to fix it, but just listen and try to understand, to see what they could, to try to just understand me. For, I don't tell people things, my story, to make them feel bad for me. I just tell them to make awareness, like, hey, there's kids still going through this. You've seen the struggles. I wasn't always this person, and I'm not telling you to make you feel bad. I just want you to understand who I am. And, and so many people think, when we talk about it, we want people to just feel bad for us. No, we want our story heard.
Yeah, and a lot of people just will instantly start feeling bad for me, and when people like that, instantly like, oh, poor you. I'm like, please don't start that shit. I don't need you to feel sorry for me. Like, I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I literally, I'm trying to not feel sorry for myself. Like, can you not feel sorry for me?
You don't understand how hard it is to, not keep saying it was a dream that happened.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so did you know that it was going to be an all-boys school when you got to Agape, or did they just tell you they were transferring the schools?
No, I knew about Agape. We got their newsletters every month. They had some natural disaster stuff that our school would send stuff. Our pastors would go back and forth and preach at each other's schools.
So
we were
spring. Go ahead.
We were the girls. Agape was the boys. Now, we did take some boys, but there's a certain family that all their adopted children went to these boarding schools. And they started with going to Mountain Park, and all of them had ended up in all of these that we've connected. That's to show how connected they are, just to kind of shuffle around and work in. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm making sense right now.
You're good. You're making sense. It's essentially essentially, if I'm getting what you're saying correctly, that they were all just interlinked schools, so it's essentially just like moving you to another school, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because there was a couple girls that had been there as long as me, and we were really close. And so we got separated, and she went to one school and I went to this other school. And then she shows up at my school and we see each other, and we're like, because she's 2 years younger than me. I knew her since she was 12 years old. We were close. She was adopted from South Africa. She was adopted from Ethiopia. And she's telling me these stories that happened to this other school. And I'm like, well, here, let me tell you what happened over here. And hey, you remember these guys' names? Because you'd learn people's names because you'd hear them. Yeah. And I'm like, here, they're here, they're here, they're all over there, 7 miles away. So they hear our names too. And it was just, there was a bunch of us parkies that went there because that's what we've all banded together. We talk. There's groups with us that there's been books written from that school, and we're all there for each other. People don't understand, like, they're like, you haven't talked to this person in 3 years, but you're going to drop what you're doing to help them. And I'm like, you don't know what they helped me through. And it's trying to explain it. We call each other parkies, but it's like military. Everybody understands the term battle buddy.
Yeah,
and I'm like, we're my battle. And we know, just make a phone call, post in the group, and somebody will be there just because, hey, I remember this. And I know this girl, she went through this. No, these fuckers don't, these people don't get to win.
For sure.
And the thing that's amazing that I love, that it's probably driving them insane, because we were not allowed to exchange contact info with each other. Like, the only ways you could do like phone numbers would be like circle numbers in a Bible and just hand it off, different. That's how we had to communicate with each other. So then to see, because if we got together on the outside, we would be bringing each other down, and we would end up back in sin because we didn't need to talk to each other ever again outside the schools. Because if we started talking, form the army that's being formed to be, no, enough's enough.
For sure. I completely understand what you're saying. At Agape, how long were you there in transition?
I was there about a month. So I was like, I lived with a couple staff families. I helped out in the kitchen a little bit. Like, it was the weirdest thing though. Like, when I had to walk through the guys, because there was like 100 or maybe 150, 200 guys there. And they all have colored shirts on, because at this school, at my first school, we didn't have uniforms. Second one, we did color shirt, depending on your status in the program. And most of them were in burgundy shirts. So it became like, I called it the Red Sea, because if I had to walk through, they had to like split this wide path for me to walk through. They couldn't look at me. I couldn't look at them. If we got caught looking at each other, oh my God, the workouts or the lines or the screaming that you'd get, or the demotion and status, because you communicated with the opposite sex.
For sure.
And then the other girls started coming, and we moved over to the property that it was originally like a halfway house for guys coming out of Agape to learn how to have a job and stuff, because you're taught zero life skills, and then it takes a while to become socially inept again, because you can't talk, so it's like this awkward phase when you get out, where you don't know how to, and then we struggle with it because we have the darkest humor, how to actually be socially normal. And that's a passion of mine. My dream is to start a school staffed by survivors of the boarding schools, to help these kids adjust because of the complete isolation and stuff. And then it's like you step through time when you step back into the real world, and it's hard.
Yeah, reintegration, like a reintegration school with survivors, so the survivors could be like, I don't know exactly what you might went through, unless you went to the same school as them, which would be cool too. If you went to if there was survivor to survivor, like Spring Creek to Spring Creek, they'd be like, I know exactly what you went through. Like I was there, like.
Or hey, let me get you in touch with. I have some friends that went there, because I've got some friends that went to Spring Creek, and here, let's do this. And that's my dream, is to get us all working together so we can do things like that, because it's not just this one group of schools, it's the entire thing. And if we can work together, then when you come out, there's no support. We had to build this support network that these kids that are starting to come out, if we can get messages to them and things like that, then there's a support network already set up here. Let me show you how to do this, because I've been there. And to stop from the cycle of the decades to hit to it, and just to end up having a place where, hey, your school shut down. Come on, we got you. We've been there. We're not, we believe you. Number one, we believe you.
For sure. And I feel like, I know like with, I don't know everything about it, but I know like with Breaking Code Silence and Unsilenced, or if I'm getting the facts wrong, don't buy my head off, please. But I know that there's been a lot of infighting between a lot of these groups and whatnot. And really, my thing is like, come on, guys, we need to just come together. I don't know the exact details, but infighting should not be a thing with us survivors. Like, we need to come together to make a difference. Like, you know, us like individually and like a few groups and pockets of where we're grouping together is fine, but we need to really all to come together if we really want to have any hope of putting this completely to its end. We need to all to come together on one united front and realize that we might not be able to all have the same views and whatnot, and that's fine. We need to learn how to agree to disagree and just come together, in my opinion.
That's my.
So
I know what fightings you're talking about and things like that.
yeah. So I feel like that's kind of counterproductive, considering the fact that we've all been through shit. It doesn't matter how much or how little shit you went through. You still went through shit. You still went through the shit. So like.
Are you going to get listened to by having 50 people outside of school? Or are you going to get more listened to having thousands of people outside of school? Because it doesn't matter what branch the school is. They are using these tactics. It is wrong.
Yeah, for sure. And we all need to be united when we're standing outside that school too, on one front. You know, we all need to have one, or at least one goal, exactly where everybody has that same goal, or else it's not going to work. Because
yeah, it's not.
To be able to ask any individual person and them say the same thing. It's like the same thing, like if you witnessed a crime or whatever, you would say the story of what happened, and you need to have all those people come together telling the same story, or else you're going to have discrepancies and you're not going to be believed. It comes off the same way. If we're trying to, you know, stop something from happening, we need to come together and be like, yeah, we're all united on this one front. We want to stop this. That should be the biggest goal. We want to get these places shut down, or at least entirely fully regulated. But I don't feel like that would even work at this point. So we need to come together and get them shut down.
Yes. You know, silent no more. Because, you know, there's the Breaking Code Silence. I Hear You Survivor. I was a big part of the I Hear You Survivor.
Yeah.
Because this has been my dream. Long story short, when I got out of the schools, I was being kept against my will. I didn't have the funds to get out. I didn't have the relationship with my family. I went on a home visit. My parents made me go back. So this was in January 2006. I was 18 and a half, still there. And
this was at Wings of Faith?
yes.
Okay.
And I was considered staff, but I was still terrified of if they found out I was trying to leave, what would they do? Because when somebody did run or something, the levels that they went to catch these people.
Okay, well, let's talk about that a little bit. What was their policy on runners? Who did you see try and run? Did anybody make it? Let's go there.
Well, the biggest thing they would do is preach to you that if you ran, God was going to strike you down. God was going to kill you. You know, if you, as soon as somebody ran, because, you know, you have these orientation guides that you're not allowed to be farther than arm's distance from them at all times. You know, once you get so far, if you're too far gone, restraint. That meant girls. And you had to do it to your fellow friend, because if you didn't do it, it might end up happening to you too. Be like, oh, well, are you trying to help her? So then we're having to restrain, you know, students until the staff can get there, but then there's still chosen students that do it. Or they would go hunt the woods.
Yeah.
I've seen girls that got out and yeah, when you see your friend carried in, completely dead in the eyes, cuts all over her face, up and down her arms, just yesterday was life. Here's this just dead, broken person in the bruising, in the carrying, because she literally couldn't walk because of what they did. and you see it done multiple times. It's something you never forget.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I actually was on junior staff at Spring Creek Lodge, and I know for a fact because I actually was one of the people chasing them. Because if you don't chase them, then they're like, oh, well, you're trying to help them out or whatnot. I never did any of the jumping or anything, but I witnessed people getting jumped by like 7 or 8 people at a time, and it's not cool. Most people would just give up right when they're about to be caught and be like, I give up, just please don't hurt me, and then they'd still tackle them. Like, so I know that happens for sure, and
the way it breaks you a little bit mentally, it either breaks you or it makes you. Because when I was restrained, I remember laying there. I'd been down there 9 hours.
Yeah.
And in my head, fuck you. This is not of God. This is not humane. Everything that is going on, I'm going to play your goddamn program, and I'm going to soak up everything in here so I could turn around and find these people one day, and we're going to take you down. You're going to not get to keep doing this, because my biological mother went to the original school, the Rebecca home for girls.
Okay.
And so then when I found that out, it made me more angry, because what happened to her and then what happened to me, it was generational trauma caused by the same fucking people.
And how could you why would she send you there if she's experienced a similar place, is what gets me.
My mother was killed when I was 1.
Okay.
The supposedly story.
Okay, so she didn't send you there. So you just found out later. Okay. Sorry, my
She died when I was 1, and I was adopted when I was 3. And when I found out more about her, I said it made me angrier, because I'm like, so I had to go through all this shit because of the trauma that she had from going to these same fucking places, and there was no help for her. Nobody understood what the hell she really went through in the 80s. There wasn't freaking PTSD for women in the 80s.
There was barely computers. You could barely research it.
I mean, it wasn't known. So I'm like, so I had to go through all this trauma because of this, and this. And my mother went through the exact same trauma at the hands of the same people. And we somehow, oh, hell no.
Yeah. Screw that.
But just how long it's been going on in this country.
Yeah, it's insane, and it needs to be stopped. So this Wings of Faith school, how long were you there?
I was there from June 2004 to January 2006. I was pretending to listen to preaching tapes. I was a staff, and it was my job to sleep in the dorm some nights and just watch the girls.
Yeah.
Make sure they didn't break any rules, because then I'd have to give them jumping jacks and things. But I was listening to the radio, but I was pretending I was listening to preaching tapes. And I had just come back from going home for the first time in like 5 years. And I always knew this was wrong, but I got a freaking taste, and I want that. The song, I Want to Go Home, Michael Bublé's song, I Want to Go Home, came on, and I'm done. And it was the next night, it was my job to lock the dorms up, because we were magnetically locked in. The windows were all nailed shut, so nobody could get out. So I was always scared if a fire broke out, what would happen? But, so I decided I was done.
Sorry, I had to open my window. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I decided, I heard that song, and I was like, I was done. So I locked the dorm just in case they went and checked on it, because if I'd left it unlocked, all hell would have broke loose, because I was trying to help a girl escape.
Yeah.
And I unlocked every door in the house, every window. I stayed up till 3 o'clock in the morning, and I freaking took off, and I started hitchhiking. And long story short, I ended up selling magazines door to door for 3 years to put a roof over my head.
So that was, so you just left the program and hitchhiked?
Yes, I escaped at 18, almost 19.
Oh, wow. Okay. That could have
There's actually students from Agape that remember it, because I was the single staff. Like, obviously all the girls remember it, but the guys remembered at the guys' school because they were out looking for me.
Oh, wow.
And I was almost 19. Why would you be out looking for an adult like that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, so after you got home from the program, how was reintegrating into society? Did you? Yeah, how was it? How did it go?
I went from being in a boarding school to selling magazines door to door, like having to introduce myself to random people, talk to people, do all this crap that I'm like, and I was so naive, so innocent. I couldn't look people in the eyes for forever. I was so shy. You know, a guy looked at me, I automatically blushed because, I wasn't allowed to really any interaction with people for like 5 years.
That's
I still wearing my long skirts for a little bit because I didn't know how to wear pants. And then one day it was like, all right, I'm done. I'm getting a tattoo. I'm going to get drunk. I'm getting my pants. I'm dyeing my hair, cutting my hair.
Yeah.
But it was, 5 years. There's still times that people are like, well, don't you remember when this happened? And I'm like, no. They're like, but it was in like 2003. I was like, no, I was in boarding school. I
Yeah.
have no idea what you're talking about. Celebrities dying, musicians dying, world events and stuff. It was the craziest thing to me to be like 5 years. Literally, it was like it felt like a time traveler because it was 5 years of literally having to catch up on everything. Technology, between 2001, 2006, there was a huge jump. And so trying to get adjusted to all that, it was hard. It was hard. Like, I'm allowed to talk to people.
For sure. Were you always waiting for their shoe to drop?
Yeah, I still do it. When good things start happening, because, in the program, good stuff happens means, you got to be really careful.
Yeah.
Because they're being nice. Why are they being nice? What do they really have in mind? Let's behave. It's that ultimate reverse psychology.
For
and
sure.
so still today, sometimes when things start going too good, I'm like, hold up. We're not going in run because things are going too good.
For sure.
We're allowed to have good things because it felt like I wasn't allowed to have good things for the longest.
For sure.
That I didn't deserve them.
For sure. For sure. Okay. I have a few more questions for you. If you could go back in a time machine and not go through it, would you do it?
Do what?
If you could go back in a time machine and not go through that boarding school and that experience in your life, would you do it?
That's a tough question. Because that experience changed everything, changed my life entirely. To where I don't know, it changed my worldview on things, it changed my view on me, but then at the same time, it gave me this passion to help people, to be there for somebody, to, hey, nobody would, I don't know, because I don't know, I can't imagine a life without it, to where I don't know if I could say to go back and change it or not.
Yeah. Most people don't know.
But that's, I've accepted that it is what it was. It was part of my life.
Okay.
Let's just not make it a continuing cycle.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, fair enough. And is it your belief, knowing what you know now, that these places could should or even could be regulated at this point? Yeah, I'm getting better at that. Or is it your belief that they should all just be shut down?
I think these schools that have decades of abuse allegations, they need to be shut down.
Yeah.
Because when you have decades of victims that don't know each other, telling the exact same stories, that needs to get shut down.
Well, that's also admissible in court. That kind of evidence is admissible in court too. When different people from different places are telling the same story, that's in a crime. You'd look at that and say, yeah, okay, that's probably the story. Right?
If there could be regulation, if there could be, people that work at these schools that is literally about the children's rights.
Yeah.
And the fact that, yes, you may be a minor, but you still have some kind of rights, to make sure that these children are being helped, because there is such a need for places like this there could be a good thing to happen with the right, keeping the families together and involved, and, the right care, because sometimes people need help that the families can't provide.
Yeah.
What, and it's not the family's fault. Sometimes some people are just different and need a different kind of help. And so it's so easy to say, shut them all down. Well, no, there needs to be some kind of options, but we need to have some kind of universal system thing going on to where there are people that can go in and investigate these schools. We can have options for parents of places to send their kids if they get to that level. I used to be so anti send them away until I realized, looking at from a parental perspective, that there wasn't the help needed. Yes, I would never send my children away, but that's because I know it too well.
Yeah.
But there could be situations where you need it. So these parents need options of these places. So that way we don't have to have so many adult trauma treatment centers. We can prevent the problem.
Yeah, and initially, we need to just start in childhood and just raise our kids better. Like, honestly, we just need to be better parents. Not saying that everybody's a bad parent. Not saying that most people are bad parents. I'm just saying that overall, as a society, I feel like we either, in my opinion, we need to deal with our own trauma before we have a kid, so we're not projecting our trauma onto that kid, or we just need to overall just be better parents. So they don't need these places. But then you also have children that, there's also the special cases where children are just born like that, okay? And they might not be able to change the way they think. So for people like that, like you're saying, there needs to be options for people like that. But I think
you can't, when you're dealing with trauma and mental health and stuff, you can't have a one size fits all.
Yeah.
You can't be they all need to be shut down. There needs to be options. There needs to be places but they care enough about these students. Yeah, you can come in anytime.
Yeah.
There is an open line of communication out those doors. This whole send your kids somewhere and can't talk to your child for 30 days. I would say, hell no with my children. Why can't I talk to my child whenever I want? What are you trying to hide? That I have to wait a month?
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. What was the craziest thing you saw when you were at any of these schools, and what was the best thing, if there was one, that you saw at any of these schools? If there wasn't a best thing, then, or a good thing or a decent thing that happened, then that's fine. That's fine.
The worst thing's the easiest, because there's still some of us who look for this girl because we want to, we want to see what happened to her. But I mean, there's some good memories, are just good memories. Most people don't understand. It's that, that look through the mirror without a freaking word to each other, that you knew what they were saying to you. There was that camaraderie that was built, because I guess that would be the best thing that happened, is the way we have us that went through the same schools and stuff. We are a family that, we might not agree with what you're doing in life, but we don't want to see you get hurt either.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're going to be there for you.
Okay.
The worst thing was this girl. She had a mental break, and they tried to tell us that she was faking it. Looking back, I don't know. But because of things she did, there were forced cold showers, forced scrubbing her with wire brushes, restraints. I mean, they made it to where if she moved at all, you were supposed to restrain her. They would make girls get up for an hour at night and watch her in her bed. And she's about this 300-pound girl, and they'd make her sleep on the top bunk. And if she moved, top bunk on a twin size bed, if she moved, we had to flip her mattress. She spit on one of the high guys, and in turn, he lined up all the boys and made them walk around her and spit on her. She was, until she got sent away to another school, because it's virtually impossible to get kicked out of these schools. You have to, but that was the hardest. And there's so many of us that, when we start talking, we're like, I wonder how she is. Tried to find her. but nobody knows where she is.
That's crazy. Did they have an intervention or a study hall thing there? Solitary confinement at all?
It wasn't like a room. You were in solitary confinement with everybody, if that makes sense, because there were certain punishments. You weren't allowed to look up off the ground. You weren't allowed to sit in a regular chair. You had to carry around a baby stool and sit on the baby stool. You had to wear certain clothes to where everybody knew, stand in corners, have to do, if they thought you were acting like a baby, you might have to carry around a package of diapers.
Yeah, that's called white torture. They call that kind of stuff white torture. It's white torture is essentially any and everything you can do to the person without touching them physically or becoming physical with them. So, for example, making them stand in a corner, making them stand on silence, making them look at the ground. That's all white torture. That's all stuff that they do in prisons to prisoners.
The restraints and stuff, they would make it to where it was like you were, you may as well have been locked in a cage because you couldn't do anything. You weren't even allowed to move.
Yeah.
That was my first school. My second school, they had a whole restraint room at the boys' part where they would take the boys in there, and that's where they would do the restraints. No windows, just big padded room.
Yep.
Who knows what
that's very
they
similar.
did.
Yeah. Very similar to the intervention I spent 3 days in. Okay. Is there anything else you want people to know about your experiences at these schools? Maybe to a parent that's thinking about sending their kid there? Just final thoughts.
To a parent sending your kid there, I've told many, you want your child helped and not broken more? Go somewhere else. You want a relationship with your child ever again? Go somewhere else. Look into it, look into options, sit down and see, and not blaming the parents, but see how much love are you giving your child?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times teens act out. They're not being seen, heard, loved. They're just kind of the prop.
Yeah.
Stay quiet.
How's your relationship with your parents? Have you forgiven them? Could you forgive them?
I don't. My adopted mother, we actually just started a freaking real relationship a few months ago. We've had a very rocky one because I didn't want anything to do with her because, all of a sudden she became this caring woman when I had children. And it's like, no, you weren't like this when I was a child, not after the divorce, maybe before the divorce, but no, you don't get to do this now and try to tell me what to do and act like she cared and wanted to know. I took it as like, oh, now you want, because I'm doing good, because I'm not a troublemaker. Now you want to be there, and then she had a really bad stroke last year and she doesn't remember a lot of it, but then she's told me some of her trauma, things she never told me, and it made me, trauma. Hurt people.
Yeah.
To where, I understand because I know the pain of that trauma, and I don't forgive it, but I understand it.
Yeah.
I don't condone it, but we can move past it because, I've done some stupid shit because of my trauma hurting me.
Essentially forgive but don't forget. Would that be fair?
Just accept. That's me. Forgive means, for me, forgive means I'm saying, oh, it's okay that you did this to me.
Okay.
And I'm not saying it's okay that you did this to me. I'm just saying I can see now what you were really going through.
So you accept it.
Yeah, we still have a strained relationship, but we're actually able to sit and talk now for the first time in almost 21 years.
Well, I'm happy for you for that. Sorry. Is there anything else you want to add to your story?
I want people to look up what's going on with Agape Boarding School in Stockton, Missouri, because, there's people trying and they are tuck-tailing and running. There's been so many hearings here lately, but they're doing everything they can to block it. and just look at the story and imagine, you know, if you're a young person hearing this, what would you do if your parents, what would you do if this happened to you? Or what would you have wished somebody had done for you if this happened to you? You know, put yourself in these people's shoes and go, okay, and just listen and look into it and be like, this isn't okay. We're not just going to follow the adults that have been there say, like, really look at it from different perspectives. And it's not okay. And these boys need our help. Public opinion matters. The court of public opinion is the loudest court in the world. You can get enough people on board.
For sure, for sure. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Would you be open to a part 2 sometime in the future?
Yes.
Okay. If for nothing else, just to check up on you and see how you're doing. And I wanted to remind people, if you're this far into the video, for sure, if you've watched to the end, please make sure that you're hitting the like button. Make sure that you share these videos with friends and leave a comment. It helps with the algorithms. Even if you dislike the video, to dislike it. That shares feedback with YouTube too. That actually helps me as well. So literally they know that actually helps me as well. So like or dislike, leave a comment, share the video. Thank you guys for all your support. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And you have a wonderful day.
You too.
Yep. Take care. Bye.
You too.